What if a cop slid a piece of paper through your window right now and said, just sign here? Maxency. And you had no idea what you were agreeing to. Most people sign it in under 5 seconds. They reach for that pen without reading a single word because the officer's tone makes it sound like a formality, like the only thing left standing between you and getting back on the road is your signature at the bottom of a piece of paper. That single signature has been used to waive rights, confirm guilt, and hand officers everything they need to destroy a driver's case in court. It happens every single day in traffic stops across this country. And most drivers never even realize what they gave away until they are sitting across from an attorney months later trying to figure out what went wrong. The Supreme Court just weighed in on the legal framework that governs exactly this moment. What a signature means during a traffic stop. What consent actually requires to be valid and what the law says about signed documents obtained from drivers who were never properly informed of what they were agreeing to. The ruling changes what you need to know and what you need to do the next time a clipboard comes through your window. Hit that subscribe button right now because what I am about to show you could be the difference between walking away from a traffic stop completely clean and signing your own conviction without ever understanding that you did it. Cops are trained to make this feel completely routine. I am going to show you exactly what to do before your hand ever touches that pen. Here is what you are about to learn in this video. First, what that document actually is and why it carries more legal weight than almost anything else that happens during your stop. Second, the exact sentence that buys you the time you need without making the officer angry or escalating the situation. Third, the one type of document that officers sometimes slip into a clipboard that you should never sign under any circumstances. And fourth, the word forward statement that protects your signature legally and keeps everything in your favor if this stop ever ends up in front of a judge. I have analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and this clipboard moment is where most people completely fall apart. The next several minutes could save you from a charge that follows you for the rest of your life. Stay locked in. Here is the reality of what a traffic stop actually feels like from inside the car, because understanding the pressure is the first step to resisting it. Traffic stops feel fast. You are nervous before the officer even reaches your window. Your heart rate is elevated. Your hands may be slightly unsteady. Every second of silence feels weighted with consequence. The officer is standing at your window with authority, a uniform, a badge, and a clipboard with a pen already extended towards you. Everything about the physical dynamic of that moment is designed to produce compliance. The pressure is not accidental. Officers are trained to create a sense of urgency that compels you to act before you have had time to think through what you are actually doing. Most people have absolutely no idea that the document being passed through their window is not always a simple traffic citation. Sometimes it is exactly that, a ticket and nothing more. But sometimes it is a consent form that gives officers legal permission to conduct a search of your vehicle. Sometimes it is a waiver of your right to a formal hearing on the violation. Sometimes it is a written acknowledgement of specific details that the officer has already filled in on his side. Details that he wants documented in writing with your signature attached. And because the officer says, just sign here in the same calm, matter-of-fact voice every single time, regardless of which type of document is on that clipboard, you have absolutely no way of knowing which one you are holding just by looking at it from the outside. The signature looks the same either way. The pen feels the same either way. The social pressure to just sign and get this over with feels exactly the same either way. But what you are agreeing to could not be more different. The law treats a signed document as your informed and voluntary decision. Even if you were never explicitly told what the document meant, even if the officer made it sound like a procedural formality with no real implications, even if you signed it in under 5 seconds without reading a single word, your signature is treated as evidence that you understood and agreed to whatever is written above it. That is the trap. It is built into the legal framework that governs signed documents, and it operates entirely to your disadvantage if you do not know how to navigate it. And right now, I'm going to show you exactly how to step around it completely using 4 specific tactics drawn directly from the legal principles the Supreme Court just reinforced. The first tactic is reading the document before you ever pick up the pen. This sounds obvious. It is so obviously the right thing to do that most people, when they hear it described, immediately agree that of course you should read what you sign, and then they find themselves in an actual traffic stop with an officer standing at their window. The clipboard extended, the pen pointed at the signature line, and they grab the pen and sign in 3 seconds without reading a single word, because the pressure of the moment overrides the logic that felt so clear when nobody was watching. Understanding why this happens is part of understanding how to prevent it. The officer does not have to say anything threatening or coercive to create the pressure that makes people sign without reading. The entire physical situation does that work. The uniform, the authority, the flashing lights still visible in your mirrors, the cars going past on the road, the silence that fills the space between when the clipboard arrives and when you are supposed to hand it back. Every element of that moment is pushing you toward compliance. And compliance in that context means signing quickly without asking questions. Here is what you do instead. You look at the officer calmly and you say exactly this. I would like to read this before I sign it. 7 words. That is the complete sentence. You are not refusing to sign. You are not arguing with the officer. You are not asserting anything confrontational or challenging. You are doing exactly what any reasonable adult should do before putting their name on any piece of paper in any context. The moment you say those 7 words, the dynamic of that moment changes. The officer has to wait. You now have time. And what you find on that paper when you actually read it might completely change what you do next. Defense attorneys specifically use this line in court to establish that their client was careful, deliberate, and did not sign anything blindly or under duress. When you say those words, you are creating a record. You are documenting on the officer's body camera that you exercised your right to review a document before signing it. That is not obstruction. That is not resistance. It is the fundamental legal right of any person presented with any document in any context. Take the clipboard, hold it, read every single line, read the front and the back, read the fine print. Take 30 seconds or 60 seconds or however long you need, because there is no law that requires you to sign in a specific number of seconds, and silence is not resistance. If the lighting conditions make it difficult to read because it is dark or the print is small or the clipboard is at an awkward angle, you say this: I cannot read this clearly. Can you use your flashlight so I can review it before I sign? That request is completely within your rights, and it is completely reasonable. And if the officer tries to rush you, if they express impatience or pressure you to hurry, that behavior is being captured on their body camera. And that body camera is now your best friend in any legal proceeding that follows. Have you ever been handed a clipboard during a traffic stop and just signed without reading it? Drop a comment below right now, because I want to know how common this actually is among the people watching this channel. You may have given something away that you did not know you were giving. The second tactic is asking one direct question before you touch the pen. This tactic takes approximately 3 seconds to execute, and it changes everything about the legal record of that stop. Most people assume the document is just the ticket. They assume it is standard. They assume there is nothing unusual about it because the officer did not indicate otherwise. And legal experts across the country agree that those assumptions are where people get themselves into serious trouble. Assumptions do not protect you. Questions do. The moment the clipboard comes through your window, before you pick up the pen, before you even reach for the clipboard, you look at the officer and you ask this: can you tell me exactly what I am signing and what it means legally? That is the complete question. You say it calmly and flatly, with no attitude and no confrontational energy, just a clean, direct, reasonable request for information about a document you are being asked to put your name on. One of 3 things is going to happen in response. Either the officer explains clearly what the document is and what your signature means, which gives you the information you need to make an informed decision, or the officer gets vague and evasive, which tells you clearly that something on that clipboard deserves much closer examination before your pen goes anywhere near it. Or the officer says something dismissive, like it just means you got the ticket, which is your cue to read the document yourself and verify that claim before you rely on it. The Supreme Court's ruling reinforces something that case law has established clearly over decades. Consent must be knowing and voluntary to be legally valid. If you did not know what you were consenting to at the time you signed, your signature is not valid consent in the constitutional sense. Judges have thrown out signed documents in court specifically because the person who signed them was never properly informed of what they were agreeing to. But here is the critical piece that most people miss. The protection only applies if you asked. If you simply signed without asking and later claimed you did not understand, the court's response is that you had the opportunity to ask and you chose not to. Your question creates the record that your rights could only be waived if you were properly informed. And if the officer's answer on camera falls short of proper information, that recorded answer becomes part of your defense. The third tactic is knowing the difference between a ticket and a consent document before you sign anything. This is the tactic that matters most, and it is where the most serious mistakes happen in the most traffic stops. A traffic citation is a legal notice of a violation and a promise to appear in court or pay a fine by a certain date. Signing a traffic citation does not mean you are admitting guilt. It means you received notice of the violation and you understand you are required to respond to it. In most jurisdictions, signing a citation is legally required, and refusing to sign can itself be a violation. That kind of signature, the receipt acknowledgement, is generally something you are obligated to provide. But there is a second category of document that looks almost identical to a traffic citation from the outside, in the same format, on the same kind of paper, handed over in the same way on the same clipboard. This second type is a consent form, a waiver, or a written acknowledgement that goes beyond simply confirming you received the ticket. It might be a written consent to search your vehicle. It might be a waiver of your right to a formal hearing on the violation. It might be a written acknowledgement of specific facts about the stop that the officer has already filled in and wants documented with your signature as confirmation. Here is how you tell the difference before you sign. You read the top of the document first and you look for specific words. Consent, waiver, authorization, agreement. Acknowledge the following facts. Any of those words appearing on a document that was handed to you alongside a traffic citation should stop you completely. Do not sign until you understand exactly what that language is doing in that document and exactly what your signature would be agreeing to. If you see any language that looks like a consent or waiver beyond the simple citation receipt, you look at the officer and you say this exactly. I do not consent to any waivers or agreements beyond acknowledging receipt of this citation. Memorize that sentence. Say it word for word. What you are doing when you say it is drawing a precise legal boundary. You are willing to sign the citation, acknowledging you received it. You are not willing to sign away any rights or agree to any additional terms. You are separating the two things in real time on the officer's body camera, which means neither a prosecutor nor a judge can later claim that your signature covered more than you explicitly agreed it covered. You cannot be arrested for declining to sign a consent form. The only signature that can be legally compelled in most traffic stop situations is the citation receipt. Anything beyond that is your choice and your choice alone. And the moment you make that choice explicitly and verbally on camera, it is part of the permanent record of that stop. The fourth tactic is the closing statement that legally protects everything you just did. You have read the document. You have asked what it means and gotten the officer's answer on camera. You have identified whether it contains consent or waiver language and addressed it accordingly. Now, before your pen touches the paper on the citation itself, you use one final line that ties everything together and creates the most important single piece of legal protection you can generate in a traffic stop. You look at the officer and you say this out loud, clearly, at a volume that the body camera will capture without any question. I am signing this citation only to acknowledge receipt, and I am not admitting guilt or consenting to anything beyond that acknowledgement. Say it before you sign. Say it slowly, say it clearly, then sign. That sentence takes about 8 seconds. What it accomplishes is significant and documented by case law. It creates an official verbal record captured on the body camera that your signature had a specific and limited legal meaning. It prevents a prosecutor from standing up in a courtroom months later and arguing that your signature was an implicit admission of anything beyond the bare fact that you received the citation. It boxes your signature into its narrowest possible legal interpretation, and it does so in your own voice at the time of the stop in a way that cannot be reinterpreted or disputed after the fact. This concept is grounded in established case law around limited consent. Courts have recognized repeatedly that a signature given with an explicit and contemporaneous verbal limitation does not carry the same legal weight as an unrestricted signature. When you state your limitation out loud before signing, you are not creating a technicality. You are exercising a well-established legal principle that protects the meaning of your consent from being expanded beyond what you actually agreed to. Defense attorneys teach this approach to clients specifically because it works. And it works because it creates a record that speaks for itself in court. Now, let me walk you through all 4 tactics working together in a single complete traffic stop scenario so you can see exactly what this looks like from beginning to end. You are pulled over for rolling through a stop sign. The officer runs your license and registration, returns to your window, and extends a clipboard toward you with a pen. The wrong way to handle this, the way that most drivers handle it, goes like this. The officer says, "Just sign here. Nertsai atansai da." And the driver reaches for the pen immediately. They sign without reading. The officer nods and walks back to his car. The driver pulls away, feeling relieved that it is over. 3 weeks later, a court notice arrives. It turns out that the second page on that clipboard was a written acknowledgement of specific facts about the stop. Facts the officer had filled in, including language that a prosecutor later uses to push for a higher fine and argue that the driver essentially confirmed guilt at the scene of the stop. The driver had no idea. They thought they signed a ticket. The body camera shows them signing without asking a single question or reading a single word. There is no record of any objection or limitation. The signature covers everything above it. Here is the right way using all 4 tactics. The officer hands you the clipboard and says, "Just sign here. Nei tadam and sai dai." You pause. You say, "I would like to read this." Before I sign it, you hold the clipboard and you read every page carefully. You notice that the second page contains the word waiver in the header and includes language about a formal hearing. You ask, "Can you tell me exactly what I am signing and what it means legally?" The officer explains that the second page is a waiver of your right to contest the violation at a formal hearing. You say clearly and calmly, "I do not consent to any waivers or agreements beyond acknowledging receipt of this citation." The officer acknowledges this and indicates you only need to sign the citation page. Before you put pen to paper, you say, "I am signing this citation only to acknowledge receipt, and I am not admitting guilt or consenting to anything beyond that acknowledgement." You sign the citation. You hand the clipboard back. You drive away. In court, your attorney pulls the body camera footage. It shows you reading the document, asking what it contained, explicitly declining the waiver, and verbally limiting your signature before you signed it. The case against you is significantly weaker than it would have been if any one of those 4 steps had not happened. That is the difference between 4 tactics and no tactics. That is the difference between knowing what is happening at your window and simply complying with what feels like the fastest way to get out of a stressful situation. In a few days, I am dropping the video on what to do when an officer says they smell something in your car, because that is one of the most abused claims in traffic stop history. And it gets people arrested every single day in situations where they had every right to drive away clean. Subscribe right now so you do not miss it, because that video connects directly to everything you just learned. Here is the complete recap of all 4 tactics, because this information only protects you if it is actually in your memory. When the clipboard arrives, always read the document before you touch the pen using the line, "I would like to read this before I sign it." Always ask what you are signing and what it means legally, so the officer is on the record with whatever explanation they give. Always look for consent and waiver language and refuse to sign anything beyond the citation receipt using the exact words, "I do not consent to any waivers or agreements beyond acknowledging receipt of this citation." Cite may die. And always say your limiting statement out loud on camera before signing, using the words, "I am signing this citation only to acknowledge receipt, and I am not admitting guilt or consenting to anything beyond that acknowledgement." Most people have no idea any of these steps exist. You now do. That puts you ahead of the overwhelming majority of drivers on the road. Smash the like button if this just changed how you are going to handle your next traffic stop. Drop a comment below and tell me which tactic shocked you the most. Was it the consent form hidden inside the clipboard alongside the citation? Was it the limiting statement you say out loud before you sign? Was it the fact that your signature can cover things you never read? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe right now so you catch every update. And stay sharp out there. Stay safe.